father of the man. The hotel room wasn't quite as he had left it that morning. Nothing was stolen, but there were strange, cluttering additions, as if some child had been setting up the room for an impromptu drama or science fiction game. The alarm clock was decorated with a twist of silver foil like a miniature space helmet. The bookshelf was adorned with two tiny plastic kangaroos facing each other, and similar additions were carefully posed on every available surface. Frank rang the reception desk. "Did you give my key to anyone while I was out?" "No, sir." "That would be unthinkable." "Well then, do the chambermaids make a habit of leaving plastic animals and toy space helmets in new guests' rooms?" "I should very much doubt it, sir. I'll check who's been assigned to tidy your room straight away, sir." "Thank you." The incident was not resolved that night, but Frank did not let that worry him. After all, he had notes to prepare for the plenary session next day, and would require great order of mind to clinch the deal with Micronics Limited on the best terms. He therefore spent a couple of hours writing, and phoned London twice to check that all was well with the family. Cocoa was brought up to him, and he nestled it gently between a woolly mammoth and a furry anteater, so it wouldn't get cold too quickly. The night was warm and restful, and the notes he had written were hovering placidly round his brain, lulling him to sleep. The tiny space helmet landed suddenly on his pillow as the little hammers of the alarm clock battered themselves against the bell at 7 sharp. A day of destiny, thought Frank, as he rang for breakfast and reached out for the folder of last night's notes to refresh his memory. The paper was not the same. It was lined, like an exercise book, widely apart, and the handwriting was not his own studied, narrow style, illegible to the unpractised eye, but rather the broad, innocent, plain-as-day writing of one who had only just learned to write. The wording was different too, childish, with the words mashed to an easily digestible form like apricot puree for babies. Instead of, "Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to propose the following plans for a cooperative venture to provide effective competition against ever-increasing Japanese imports," it read, "Come on lads, let's stick together and show the nips a thing or two." Instead of, "Our trading partners in South America have indicated their interest in the product we are currently producing in collaboration with the Munich factory," it read, "They told us gringos that the Krauts were onto a good thing and they might buy a couple of dozen over in Rio." Frank decided it might be better to leave the notes behind and rely on his memory, so he put his notes back in the folder and got up to unlock the door and retrieve breakfast. However, it wasn't left on its tray, on the floor as on the previous morning, but it was held in the hands of a small figure who looked disconcertingly familiar. "Thank you. You needn't really have waited." "I wanted to see you," interrupted the boy, in a strange, faraway voice. "Do you know anything about the notes, the woolly mammoth, and these other paraphernalia?" asked Frank slightly menacingly. "Who could have put them there, except you yourself, sir?" the boy inquired sweetly and innocently. "But you know about them?" "Yes. You asked my boss last night, and he asked the whole staff in turn. The chambermaid claims it wasn't her, and why shouldn't we believe her? Woolly mammoths don't come cheap, you know." "I know your voice from somewhere," started Frank slowly, "and your face. Where have I seen you before?" "You shall know, in the end," he answered in the same sweet, innocent way, "but the time is not yet right." The boy left the tray in between a plastic rhinoceros and the furry anteater, and Frank ate in silence, reconstructing his notes for the day ahead. The boy's face hovered, grinning in his mind's eye, distracting him, taking his mind from silicone to sandpits and from computers to Star War machines. It took an hour to regain the concentration required for the job on hand, but Frank carried through the day and was able to impress the committee with his second-hand ideas. Eventually, the committee adjourned for afternoon tea, which was brought in by the tea boy, the very same boy who had brought Frank his breakfast. Now he knew where he had seen that face before. It was his own face. That freckled, grinning face which confronted him with the morning toothpaste in the bathroom mirror before the weary school day. The 12-year-old face which could never keep straight in front of a camera. "Frankie," said the adult softly, oblivious of the other members of the committee, and the boy turned slowly, with no flicker of surprise on his little mask of a sweet smile. "Frankie, that's your name, isn't it?" "What's that to you, old man?" came the unhesitating reply. "I don't really recognize you anymore, you know. You're not really what I expected." "Any more? Since when? This morning?" "No, since the time we parted company 20 years ago," he whispered gravely. "You're too young." "No, you're the one who's the wrong age," interrupted Frankie the child. "You'll see when the time is right. By the way, your speech was tediously boring. You really should have used my version, you know." "So you admit," Frank started, almost shouting, but the boy had left hastily, and the chairman suggested they continue the meeting. Frank had a vision of the insolent, impatient yawn of a freckled face and the wink of an insolent eye. Back in his hotel room, he was not really surprised to see a row of plasticine models representing the evolution of a horse, and a crown of tinsel above the bedhead, and even a life-size picture of Superman affixed to the ceiling in flying position. He looked around to see whether Frankie had left any written clues to explain his presence 20 years late, but the time was clearly not yet right. Tomorrow, of course, his birthday, that would be the right time, his 32nd birthday, or was that his 12th? He could not quite get his thoughts straight on that point. The night was not so restful. The plastic kangaroos haunted his sleep, chuntering that they had come on a special mission from Mars and were illegally detained in this room. The furry anteater and the woolly mammoth conspired in some unknown language, and of course the picture of Superman kept repeating over and over again that he must be let out of this place before it was too late to save Earth. All these incoherent morsels of childish fantasy crowded the businessman's brain, and sleep became impossible. At the 50th revolution under the sheets, Frank sat up in a sweat and shouted wildly, "Frankie, stop it, stop it!" At which, of course, the neighbours hammered their objections. Then a quiet tap at the door attracted his attention, so he got up to open it. The boy, of course, was there, smiling slightly more menacingly this time. "The experiment is at an end," he announced as if to himself. "The businessman may disappear. He serves no further purpose." He looked straight through Frank, as if his command had already been obeyed. Frank, who was vainly searching for a suitable reply, shrank visibly into his crumpled pyjamas and wasn't sure whether to laugh or be afraid. "Don't try your free will," continued the child. "It was an illusion which I've now removed from you like an unnecessary growth." Although his words were now addressing Frank directly, his tone kept the same expression, as if nobody else were actually present. Not only was the boy the only one in the room, but it was no longer a hotel room either. A supreme effort of will on Frank's part made it return to the hotel room state for a few brief seconds, after which Frankie's bedroom, Frankie's will, and Frankie's woolly mammoth prevailed. There was even the smell of Mother's own fresh-baked bread and fruitcake coming from downstairs. "I can see you doubt your inexistence," muttered Frank's juvenile self-appointed creator. "It's a natural reaction after so many years of invented life. Can't you see it's better this way, though? You're not the first possible future I've invented for myself, you know. But I'm the real future. I'm the real present." And he looked round vainly for clues to his existence. "I can't be thrown away like some paperback trash. And what about my wife? Won't she have any say in this?" "What say could she possibly have? I never even knew her at this age." "Caught you. You're talking in the past. You're no more than a ghost." "Double bluff, my elderly child. I'm simply giving you my thoughts as you would perceive them." "I never used words like that at your age," mumbled Frank. vaguely trying another tack and thinking that even if Frankie claimed to be his creator, the tables might yet be turned, and he, the elderly child, might turn out to be imagining the youngster. "Oh yes, you did. Oh yes, I do. We are both of us quite articulate, my imagined friend. Try to remember yourself when you were 12. Don't you see yourself articulating your great expectations and doubts to yourself in the mirror, giving yourself airs as if some great scientist or artist, social benefactor or space explorer? Which way will it be, Frankie, I say to myself, which way? So here I am, drafting out all my options. You're just one of them, and one of the dowdiest, however much you earn with your dreary committees and board meetings." "The meeting was far from bored with what I had to say to them," quipped Frank weakly and desperately. "I know. I'll prove this is my present, not yours. I'll phone the chairman." He stretched out his hand to where he remembered the hotel phone used to be and tightly gripped the invisible receiver, so tightly that the thin air rushed out, leaving his clenched fist, which he raised to his ear, and imagined a tone. The hotel manager's voice came through the tiny gap in his fist, faintly and hoarsely, as if the sound had to travel through miles of sandpaper. "Hello," said the voice. "Can I help you, sir?" "Yes." The urgency in Frank's voice was making his words clipped and breathless. "You are there, aren't you?" Once the doubt was expressed, of course, the voice had to traverse even more miles of sandpaper, and it appeared to be answering, "Only just, sir, only just." "Well, can you get me Mr. Henchley, who's at the Abelard Hotel? Please, I must speak to him." But the answer was totally blotted out, as Frankie's mother called from downstairs that lunch was getting cold and the dog was getting hungry. "I'll see you later," announced the child to Frank's wavering image. "Don't go away now. I may still have a use for you." The wavering image stumbled towards the armchair and tried to recollect his thoughts, now that his alleged creator had left the room. "Those 20 years must have been real," he said to himself. "No child could have made up so much. Besides, I never carried on like that when I was 12, did I? Is this the room I used to have then? Were there really woolly mammoths, plastic kangaroos, and an image of Superman? It's hard to squeeze out those details of memory. Was that my mother's voice? Is this the view out of the window? Is this right? Did the bed cover... the bed cover! It's the same as at the hotel. Concentrate now. We can get the whole room back to sanity thanks to that puce bed cover. Concentrate. No good. The thing's changing before my eyes. The light blue I chose when I was 10 completes the vision. Am I really lost? Can I gain a foothold by going outside the room? Or is this an illusion, so I risk falling down an unseen hotel lift shaft when I think I'm going across a solid landing? He risked it, and immediately recognized the old green carpeted landing, and downstairs the energetic bustling of his late father, or rather, his previously late father, who hadn't yet had time to become late. Frank called downstairs, "Dad, is that really you?" But there was no response. He picked up a tennis ball the child had left on the landing and rolled it down the banister to attract the old man's attention. The ball described some eerie feat of geometry and returned to its original spot on the landing. Frank bent down to pick it up again and threw it with great force at the dining room door downstairs, but the same rules of geometry applied, if anything, more eerily and rapidly. He hit the banister with a great force of frustration and was rewarded with a solid wooden note, but the old man didn't hear it. Only Frank heard it, and perhaps Frankie downstairs. So Frank rushed headlong down to the front door and forced his way out into the street, across the familiar park of his childhood, past the brand new boating house, which he vaguely remembered having seen destroyed when he was 15, and as he progressed, his existence became more and more tenuous, and his image wavered, weaker and weaker, and Frankie began again.